Battle through the heavens, grand world. Chapter 66. Fight for money. Lei family, Lei Te, please enlighten me. Some arrogant and conceited words were uttered by the white-robed young man. Most of the people on the viewing platform coldly snorted. Most of them despised the actions of the former during the past half a year. However, most of them could only sigh in their hearts at the talent of the former. Given the current strength of the former, he had the right to be arrogant. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes and looked at the arrogant Lei Te on the stage. The latter had a tall nose bridge, an angular face, and could be considered a talented person. At this moment, there was a proud sneer on the corner of his mouth as he looked at the challenger in front of him. It was as if he was looking at a dead man. Wang Fei hope that young Master Lei can be a little gentler when he attacks. Little Qing, who was called Wang Fei, let out a breath. He cupped his hands towards Lei Te and said, although he had great confidence in his own strength. However, Wang Fei knew how vicious this handsome young man's heart was. A sovereign master of the same level wouldn't pose much of a threat to him. With his strength of only 8 sovereigns, if he wanted to win. He was daydreaming, but the temptation of 500,000 was too great. If he could get it, all the problems he was facing would be solved. Don't worry. Since you have admitted defeat, I will show you mercy. Lei Te smiled coldly and looked at Wang Fei. After the judge gave the order, Lei Te's body suddenly changed. With an extremely fast speed, he rushed towards Wang Fei with a faint thunderous sound. At the same time, a cold and cruel voice sounded in the arena, causing the expressions of everyone in the stands to change slightly. I don't want your life. You just need to leave behind a leg. Wang Fei's expression immediately changed drastically. A green color instantly surged onto the former's face. Sensing that the sharp wind from the fist was about to hit his face, Wang Fei did not have the time to curse. His body flashed and a faint origin monarch ki surged from his feet, attempting to dodge this ferocious attack. A voice that caused Wang Fei's heart to turn cold suddenly sounded. Without waiting for the former to react, a leg that carried a lightning-like momentum swept over. Wang Fei's expression changed wildly. If this kick were to land, it was likely that his leg would be crippled. Immediately, the origin monarch ki within his body surged out wildly, forming a faint light curtain in the direction where Lei Te's lightning-like kick was heading. Silver light flickered on the light curtain. Clearly, it possessed an extraordinary defensive strength. Just as Wang Fei was thinking, a rushing wind sound suddenly sounded. Before Wang Fei could react, a cold palm grabbed his neck. With just a slight force, his head would probably be separated from his body. Hiss. Seeing that Wang Fei, who was at the peak of the 8 sovereign warriors, was defeated by Lei Te so easily, most of the people on the stage took a deep breath. This guy's strength. Sure enough, he was much stronger than half a year ago. Wang Fei's neck was pinched by Lei Te. When he saw the sinister smile on the latter's face, his heart started beating wildly. His voice trembled slightly. I admit. Before he could finish his words, Lei Te's knee suddenly slammed into the former's thigh. Immediately, the clear sound of bones cracking resounded throughout the entire martial arena. When the people on the viewing platform saw this scene, their faces shook. The eyes that they looked at Lei Te once again revealed some anger and fear. Immediately after, an inhuman shrill cry suddenly sounded out from Wang Fei's mouth. The pain of his bones cracking was deep in his heart. The former's body trembled and he fell onto the stage due to the intense pain. This kid from the Lei family is a bit too vicious. At this moment, on the VIP seats, a low voice filled with anger slowly sounded out. Anyone could hear a trace of killing intent in the voice. Xiao Yan also looked in the direction of the voice. He saw a middle-aged man in brocade robe standing up from the VIP seats. A dignified and imposing aura arose spontaneously. City Lord, a child's play. If you want to make a move, it would be a little discrediting of your status. On the side, Rek, who was dressed in colorful clothes, also stood up and stared intently at the middle-aged man. When the middle-aged man heard this, he took a deep breath and looked at Lei Te with a gloomy expression, who was acting as if nothing had happened. He turned around and said to Rek with a cold smile, "If it wasn't for you, that little bastard Lei Te wouldn't even be able to get out of this martial arena." Rek's expression darkened when he heard that. After a long time, he said with a fake smile, "But I won't die for a while." Furthermore, this was Fei Tae'er's 96th winning streak. There are still 4 more matches. I hope the city lord won't disappoint me. The middle-aged man snorted coldly, flicked his sleeve, and said in a cold voice, I also wish that he can win 100 matches in a row. Don't be crippled or beaten to death by anyone in the next match. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Rex sneered and said, many thanks for the city lord's concern. But I think that the city lord's wish probably won't come true. With another snort, the middle-aged man returned to his seat. He glanced at a young and beautiful girl in a white dress beside him and shook his head with a bitter smile. Upon seeing this, the latter's face turned gloomy. She gently bit her red lips and looked at the insufferably arrogant Lei Tae. Her beautiful eyes flashed with undisguised hatred. When the people below saw the 2 experts competing against each other, they seemed to be used to it. After a short quarrel, they looked at the competition ground again. Wang Fei, who was about to lose consciousness, had been carried away. That's the city lord, Xiao Yan asked softly when he saw the middle-aged man. Qin Fei nodded, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. Just now, when Lei Tae crippled Wang Fei's leg, he saw a trace of killing intent flash across Qin Wei's face. Now that he saw that the conflict between the city lord and Rek had become much more intense than usual, he knew that. He was afraid that what his father told him yesterday would come true today. This bastard Lei Tae is a little too ruthless. He came back to his senses. Qin Fei looked at the stage and saw no change in Lei Tae's facial expression. He was the second young master of Mercenary Corps. He was living the life of adding blood to the tip of a blade, but he still felt some fear towards Lei Tae's ruthlessness. On the other hand, Xiao Yan had a calm expression on his face. At the moment when Lei Tae crippled Wang Fei's leg, his facial expression didn't change at all. Who exactly is this guy? After easily crippling Wang Fei, Lei Tae's facial expression was the same as before. He still had a faint smile on his face. However, that smile was cold and vicious in everyone's eyes. After waiting for a moment, before anyone could challenge him, Lei Tae furrowed his brows. He had fought for more than half a year for the so-called 100 battle agreement. In this half a year, every time he saw that girl who was getting prettier and prettier, his heart felt like it was on fire, and he wished for nothing more than to immediately embrace the beautiful woman into his embrace and warm her up. However, because of the ruthless words of the city lord, he still dispelled this thought. It was more important to him than anything else for this 100 battles agreement. Today was the last 5 battles, and he had to finish everything he said. Therefore, Lei Tae was still very dissatisfied with this kind of cold scene. Regarding this sudden cold scene, the spectators on the stage were stunned for a moment before they understood what was going on. This kind of thing was within reason. Given the degree of viciousness of Lei Tae's attack, anyone who wasn't an idiot would be able to tell that he was courting death if he went up again. Although money was good, one must still have the life to spend it. Brother Xiao Yan, aren't you going up? Qin Fei asked when he saw that Xiao Yan was still looking at the stage with a calm expression. Xiao Yan sneered when he heard this. He glanced at Rek, who was also a little anxious behind him. A strange light flashed across his eyes as he said in a low voice. That depends on how much Rek wants me to pay for Lei Tae's life. After he finished speaking, Qin Fei was stunned. Xiao Yan smiled and looked at the stage again. He narrowed his eyes and tried to understand Lei Tae's fighting style again and again. On the VIP seats, Rek couldn't help but stand up when he saw the hall suddenly turn cold. His face was gloomy as he swept across the hall. The words that were rapped by the Origin Monarch key resounded clearly in everyone's ears. If anyone is willing to fight, the Lei family will immediately offer 50,000 Monarch crystals. If you win, the reward will be 600,000. Wah! When they heard the sudden increase in the conditions, many people in the viewing gallery were startled. Immediately, there were some disturbances. Some of the youths below the age of 25 also began to stir. Their eyes were completely red as they looked at Lei Tae, who was on the competition stage. The fear on their faces also became much fainter. There was always a brave man who was rewarded handsomely. 600,000 Monarch crystal was an extremely great temptation to most of the people here. The crowd was in an uproar for a moment. A young man, whose strength was around that of 70 Shi, took a deep breath and appeared on the competition stage in front of everyone's eyes. As soon as the referee shouted the start, The young man who hadn't even used the monarch skill was suddenly kicked in the chest by Lei Te, and his chest sank. The young man spat out blood and flew backwards, smashing into a chair and shattering it. The young man who hadn't been on the fighting stage for even a minute tilted his head and lost consciousness. 97 matches. Lei Te kicked the young man off the stage. His handsome face revealed a trace of ecstasy. There were only 3 more matches left before he would be able to obtain the beauty he had been longing for that night. When he saw this young man lose so quickly, the gloominess on the face of the middle-aged man in the VIP seats became even heavier, and the slender hand that was tightly grasped in his hand heard the 97th match. It trembled slightly, and it seemed to be slightly icy cold. Rex stood in the VIP seats. His indifferent gaze swept across the venue and his expression became somewhat gloomy once again. This was because he discovered that some of the young men who were originally eager to give it a try had actually become quiet after Lei Te's kick. All of them were cowering and did not dare to step forward. 700,000 monarch crystals. The indifferent voice once again smashed into the hearts of everyone present like a giant hammer. Some of them were even breathing heavily. 700,000 monarch crystal. So many monarch crystals. Most of the people in the venue had never seen such a large number of monarch crystals before. Qin Wei's expression was indifferent as he sat a little further away from Rek. He heard that the reward had increased by another 100,000. He frowned slightly and looked at Xiao Yan, who had a smile on his face. Qin Wei suddenly understood and sneered, 700,000 monarch crystals. Lei family's patriarch had such a big tone. It was hard to say whether the Lei family could earn 700,000 a year. I can't believe he's so generous this time. Rek cast a glance at Qin Wei, who was standing far away, and said with a faint smile on his face. Don't worry, Captain Qin. I know the Lei family's accounts better than you. Of course you know better than me. Qin Wei sneered and said, old thing, just say it. You can come out. What's the maximum reward? Your skill of boiling a frog isn't very smart to use here. What? Regiment Commander Qin wants your son to take action. That's good too. I'll make it clear. The highest price I can afford is 1.2 million monarch crystals. Who has the confidence to swallow it? Just come at me. After listening to Qin Wei's words, although Rek was furious in his heart, he understood. If he increased the reward bit by bit, these people would become numb sooner or later. He might as well use a fierce strike to shock everyone. Some people who were blinded by greed would naturally take action. 1.2 million. Hearing this number, everyone in the stand sucked in a breath of cold air. It was just as Lake had expected. In an instant, several young men stood up at the same time. Qin Wei's heart was slightly shaken by such a huge number. His face trembled. After that, he smiled faintly and said, although my son isn't as talented as your young master, his character is slightly better than yours. I'm already extremely satisfied. After saying that, the corner of Qin Wei's mouth suddenly revealed a trace of cunningness. He looked down at a certain spot and said in a clear voice, little friend Xiao. I have already helped you get the highest reward. You can also make your move now. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yan, who was secretly shocked by Rek's price, couldn't help but be slightly startled. After that, he shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This old fellow was quite cunning. Chapter end. Hi guys, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.